Well, I would like to welcome Hugh Sung to Contrabass Conversations. Hugh is one of the most fascinating musicians I know, who is involved in so many areas of music, from teaching at Curtis for years to then getting involved with this company AirTurn, co-founding it, and which is a fascinating device. And now he's hosting a podcast, A Musical Life, which is the first thing I click on every Monday morning. I sat down this morning, I said, hey, there's a new episode. Start it. I just love it. He also runs a Musical Life mastermind. So we're going to get into all of this. I'm just so thrilled to have Hugh on the show. Welcome, Hugh.
Oh, Jason, thank you so much for letting me be on your show. And I'm so excited to announce that you're going to be on my show in July. I'm not sure if which episode's coming first.
Yeah, I know.
But you're going to be featured on A Musical Life, too. I can't wait to share your amazing story with my audience as well.
Well, thanks a lot, Hugh. And we've got so many things to talk about. But before we get going, maybe just let people know a little bit about your musical background, your training, and that kind of thing.
I play the piano. Do you need to know anything else?
Right.
I played the piano. I entered the Curtis Institute of Music when I was 13 years old, believe it or not. Was there for 8 years. I studied with Eleanor Sokoloff, George Bollett, who was wonderful, Seymour Lipkin, then I was on faculty there for 19 years. Can you believe that? But all during this time, I have to say I was inspired by my childhood TV shows, mainly Star Trek, the original series. And it's Star Trek, Star Wars. I've always been this sci-fi geek. And as a result of that, I've loved technology. And I was always looking for ways to incorporate technology to make my life easier and to improve my art on the piano. So anyway, I've got this dual love of music, but also technology. I'm a professional classical pianist, and I specialize in collaborative piano. And in fact, some of the very first collaborative projects I ever did were with my fellow double bass players. I worked in Roger Scott's studio for many years, so I got to know his teaching style quite well, and several of my friends have gone on to play in major orchestras. And I've actually, since my student years, I've actually been on call with the Philadelphia Orchestra, and I actually have gotten to play the piano for a lot of double bass auditions. So most of the seats at this point, at least in the past, 15, 20 years, that have been filled, I've probably been backstage helping them win their jobs. So I've played for a number of double bass auditions for the orchestra, and that's been really neat, and it's a fascinating experience. So the best part of my job is I get to work with lots of other people, and I especially love the double bass literature because that was some of the first collaborative music that I cut my teeth on.
Oh, that's very cool. Well, you've come in contact with a lot of people that have been on this podcast. They might not have even realized it, but you've had your hand in several of these people's careers. That's awesome. Now, something I've been into for many years is trying to figure out some sort of paperless solution. You know, I can't even remember how many years I would have a duffel bag filled with method books and music, and I would be trying to figure out, I've got to give this to a student or that to a student. And I had, for the last several years, kind of made the transition over to being mostly paperless on the iPad. And I'd love to hear just about how that journey has been for you. What inspired you to look for a paperless solution?
What inspired me was the empty space between my ears. I'm one of the most forgetful people. I am constantly losing things, misplacing things, and especially sheet music. It was the worst. And as a collaborative pianist, you're working on hundreds and hundreds of pieces and running from lesson to rehearsal. And invariably, every day, I would forget or misplace or leave a piece of music at home or in my office. It was terrible. I've even ruined a couple of auditions. I remember one time I was driving up the New Jersey Turnpike, getting ready for a major audition for a talented young clarinetist. And halfway up the New Jersey Turnpike, it was a 2-hour drive for me. Halfway up, I suddenly realized I left the music at home. I called him. And I said, Anthony, I am so sorry. I'm not going to be able to get to your audition on time because I forgot the music. That's horrible. That's a terrible sinking feeling. I hated that feeling. Good story, good ending to the story. Anthony has gone on to become the principal clarinetist of the Metropolitan Opera. So,
oh, okay.
I didn't hold him back too much, but at the time I thought I ruined his life. It was terrible. So that sinking feeling of not ever being sure I could trust my brain to remember. It's bad enough to try to remember your passport when you're traveling overseas and all the documents and stuff, but music, the most important thing, it just happened too many times. And I started realizing after I started applying some really neat cutting-edge technologies at Curtis, I was actually one of the very first people there, staff, faculty, anybody, to bring my own personal PC to work to try to see if I could automate the task of taking care of all of the student recitals, overseeing the logistics for all of the staff pianists who were working under me because I was a director of instrumental accompaniment at the same time. So the logistics were crazy. It was a 3, 5, 10-person job. To do this all by myself with the old paper system was just out of the question. So learning to program a relational database to automate everything transformed the operation of the school. And when I saw the power of that, I said, you know, there must be a way that I can apply this really cool technology for my sheet music. And so in 2001, Microsoft answered my dream. They came out with the first tablet PC. Now, the first ones that came out were like laptops, but the screen could swivel around, fold back down, and you could kind of hold it like we see iPads today. You know, we take iPads and tablets for granted. But back in 2001, that was the first of its kind. But what was more revolutionary than the fact that you could fold the screen over was the fact that you could read music in portrait mode. Up to that point, you could only read laptops, horizontally. You couldn't turn it around to see a full page of music. You could only see a half page of music at a time. So when they let me see a full page of music, that was the device for me. That's what I had been looking for. Now, the only problem to that was, how was I going to turn the page? Because I could only effectively see one page at a time. And that's when I started searching for solutions to turn pages with my foot. Some kind of a foot. It's funny, at the time I called it a foot pedal. I was looking for a pedal because that's what we pianists work with. We work with pedals to change our sound. But in manufacturing, you don't call them pedals, you call them foot switches. And it took me a while to figure out the nomenclature for that. So finally, when I found foot switches, I started experimenting with programming my own and skip forward a couple of years. I've met up with a fantastic entrepreneur and my business mentor, Lester Karplus, and he and I decided to go into business together to start this company called AirTurn, which is now the #1 page-turning foot switch manufacturer and reseller around the world. It's pretty amazing. It was an amazing journey. But to tell you the truth, I was one of the first professional musicians to go completely paperless way back then, before the Kindle, before the iPad. And it was an amazing journey. And people gave me a lot of strange looks on stage. I'd be carrying these big bulky tablet PCs with power cords and a big cable going down to my oversized foot switches. One was a transcribing 3-pedal thing. And these are the things that you use for dictation, you know. Clicking on stage while I'm turning pages. It was just a visual mess. But I saw the potential of that. And skip forward to today, and now we have the foot switches, the page-turning pedals of my dreams.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And if it's somewhere, it's not quite within arm's reach, but I have my AirTurn here, and oh, there we go. There we go. It's such a handy device, and I first used it. It actually saved my bacon. Earlier this year, we were doing a musical at the school that I was teaching at, and the pianist was having to read off the conductor scores, one of those types. And so there's a page turn every 4 bars, essentially, which is pretty much impossible. And so that he found, so I loaded the score up on my iPad. I scanned it, put it into a piece of software I like. I think it was 4Score that I was using. And within about 5 minutes, he was like a pro. So
Wow.
Yeah, so you've got it. You've got a demo right there, I see.
I do. Yeah. You know, and I failed to mention the thing that really makes digital sheet music so attractive is the fact that I've got this less than about a 1 pound device. This little 1 pound device carries my entire library with me. Every single score I want. I mean, I've got 6,000 scores in here. So right before this interview, I thought, oh, I should pull up a double bass score. So all I did is do a search for double bass. Boom, I've got the Dragonetti double bass concerto right here.
That's
so
great.
It just takes me 2 seconds to search for anything. And so with the air turn, if you imagine this is my foot, I push this to turn the pages forwards, and then I push this pedal to turn pages backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how that works. Pretty simple. It's wireless, it's quiet. And another thing that's really cool about the fact, let me see if I can get this to be a little bit thicker. Let's see. Yeah, let's get this really thick. The other really cool thing is the fact that I can annotate on the music. Mm-hmm. I can draw my markings. When I turn the pages, the markings stay there. Oops, I'm pinching myself. Here we go. Oops. Go ahead. Oh, I have to do this. I can turn the pages, and the markings still stay there.
Yeah.
And even with bright colors, I can still erase everything. Let me find my eraser here. Where's my eraser? Here it is. I can still erase it. So it doesn't hurt the music at all. It's just a more sophisticated way to have all your music at your fingertips. In fact, just the other day, I was playing for a private lesson with a friend of mine for Yo-Yo Ma. Mm-hmm. And, we had prepared some standard concertos that he was getting ready to use for an audition. And after he played through what what I was prepared to play, out of the blue, Yo-Yo Ma asks, well, do you have anything else to play? And my friend says, well, I'm playing the Don Quixote suite. Well, there is no piano reduction of the Don Quixote suite, per se. I wrote one many years ago. But so I just happened to have it on my iPad, pulled it up, and, Yo-Yo's eyes go like, wow, that's incredible. So having everything I want instantly accessible, it's just incredible. It opens up opportunities. It makes me available to do things that a normal paper-bound pianist simply could not do.
Yeah, that is such an, once you get into the paperless world, it's so liberating to have. I mean, me personally, I have all the etude books that I use, all the method books. I've created my own system, and I've used a few different pieces of software. I'd be curious to know on the software end of things, what you've experimented with and what you find useful.
What's interesting, so I've used a number of programs. I mean, primarily for reading sheet music. The go-to these days has been an app called Forscore, F-O-R-S-C-O-R-E. And this is what I have over here right now. Interestingly, I'm actually experimenting with a brand new app called Newzik, N-E-W-Z-I-K. And it's still in development right now. And let me see if I can pull up one of my scores here. Yeah, so here we go. So it does the same kinds of things where I can turn pages with my air turn, right? But what's the killer features of Newzik is the fact that it not only works with PDF scores, but it'll also work with XML files and with text files. So let me see if I can find a text score, an XML file here for you. Let me see, demo content, Here we go. Actually, let's do this one. Let me do another score. Hold on. Here we go. Oh, even better. Let's do this one. Okay, so here's a string quartet. Let me see. Is this XML? No, this is not XML. Here we go. Okay, so here's a Bach guitar piece. Okay, this is an XML file here. Kind of small, especially on a smaller iPad Air. But look what I can do. I can open up the music and resize it so that it'll fit the music. It'll rescore itself. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah.
It'll oops, crashed. It's still in development. But the potential for these kinds of apps is absolutely amazing because you can read so many different kinds of files. So what does that mean? Well, again, I'm kind of experimenting with this and kind of giving some advice for the folks there. But eventually what this will mean is that you should be able to, let's say I'm a collaborative pianist working with a singer and I have the XML file of the song that they're working on, and then the singer comes in with a cold, can you bring it down a third or so? Instant transposition. But not only that, they can do things that you've never been able to do before. One of the most important things in an XML file is the fact that you can actually draw inking on it. You can actually mark it up. Let me see if I can get this to work. Well, like I said, this is probably not the time to be, here we go. Well, sort of, here we go. So I can take this XML file and I can draw my, oops. Well, anyway, you get the point.
Yeah.
It's still buggy, still under development, but you can draw ink annotations on the XML file. You could never do that before because that was its own proprietary file. You'll be able to read text music, so lyric sheets, so people don't read standard notation, they can just read chord charts. And again, the idea is hopefully you'll be able to transpose those chord charts instantly because they're dynamic text files as opposed to just static PDFs. So this is going to become, if the development goes as planned, this is going to be an all-purpose app for all kinds of music. It's almost like rolling up 5 or 6 different apps into one. So the team I've been talking to, they're fantastic, really responsive. In fact, they reached out to me asking me for my input and my advice. And when I was at AirTurn, I was working with about 150 different app developers for sheet music. And it was really, really cool. So I've gotten to see all different types of formats, all different types of user interfaces. So I'm probably one of the leading experts in the world on digital sheet music. And as a matter of fact, I wrote a book on the subject called From Paper to Pixels, Your Guide to the Digital Sheet Music Revolution. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on my store. But it's on Amazon. You can get it for Kindle. You can download also an EPUB version for iBooks as well. So, but it's also available on paperback too.
Well, and that's great because that's one of the questions people have a lot if they start to think about getting more into the paperless realm is like, well, what do? I have all this music. How do I get from here to here? But once you start to make that switch, it's such a liberating thing, having all that music with you, easy access at your fingertips.
It is liberating, but I'm also want to be sensitive to those folks who are nervous about this. It is a new experience. It is a new way of thinking about your music, but also thinking about information. It's interesting because folks who are paper-based, there's a tactile element to the music. I've had young students come up to me and say, well, I see the benefits of digital sheet music, but I love the smell of paper. All right, whatever. But there is something that's hard to let go of with the physical feel of paper books. Now, I won't deny that. Working with digital sheet music requires just a different open mind, a shift of thinking, because you're not going to be, you're using different senses to find things. So instead of thinking, oh, my music should be in my jar. No, wait, it's all in my iPad. Instead of thinking, oh, how am I going to, I have to find my pencil, pen. No, it's all on your iPad. I can share my music. I can read my music, access it, store it in the cloud. So even if I drop my iPad, lose it, it's no big deal because all my music is on the internet. So it's a different way of thinking. But as you said, once you get used to it, it does liberate you from the physical limitations of paper music. And the book that I wrote, From Paper to Pixels, really is written sensitive to where most musicians are, who are uncomfortable with technology. They're maybe not, they go on the computer just to, read email or, post Facebook pictures of kittens or play Angry Birds on their tablet. But when it comes to actually working on it, it can be very intimidating for a lot of musicians. And so the book was really written for those folks in mind, saying, hey, it's okay to be scared. I'm here. I'm going to walk you through it a little bit at a time, and I'll throw in some funny stories along the way, too. So I've actually heard from a lot of folks that have read the book thinking it was going to be this dry manual and all this techno-geeky, techno-babble. And a lot of folks have actually been surprised that, this book was actually fun to read. It was actually entertaining. And that was the whole point, to make the journey, which can seem like an intimidating journey, a whole lot more fun and exciting.
Well, and I'll be sure to put a link to Hugh teaching a lesson using some of this technology. It definitely talk about your love of science fiction. It's such a future-looking kind of lesson setup that you have. You've got a video on your site with the iPad, and you can and it's just very cool. And something also in the advancing the teaching in the technological realm that Hugh's done a lot of is online lessons, both with this Claire de Lune from Scratch series, and then you also teach with Artist Works. And that's a question that a lot of people ask me. They say, oh, I'm thinking about somehow doing, I don't know, Skype lessons or video lessons. And that seems to be an area, another fairly new area in teaching right now and in technology. And I'd love to hear just some of your experiences kind of making that switch into doing a lot of online teaching. What's that experience been like for you?
Well, I think before we even get into the details of online teaching, the first thing that folks need to think about when it comes to incorporating technology into their teaching, their playing, their art, is really not to get too focused on the technology itself. The whole point of the technology is to make things better. And I think that's what a lot of folks have a hard time seeing. Well, how does using an iPad make it better? Instead of seeing 2 pages, I'm only seeing 1 page. But like the video you referenced of me demonstrating how I use an iPad to teach, an in-person lesson, believe it or not, using these technologies helps me teach more effectively. My students learn faster. I learn my music faster, and that's critical for a collaborative pianist. And it helps me perform better. So the advantages of online teaching have to at least try to match or improve on your traditional teaching. That's the goal that I would set. Not just another way to teach or not just another way to get more students, but really to think about ways that you could actually teach better online. Is that possible? A few years ago, folks would have thought, oh, that's sacrilegious. You can't talk like that. There's nothing like being in person, touching a person's hands and getting, and having that tactile sense and being in the room and hearing the actual sound of the instrument there. Well, technology has improved to the point where you can get a great sense of how people sound over a Skype call, like we're doing right now, right? And even for teaching music lessons. Now, there's still some limitations, but think about on YouTube, when we all do this, when we're researching pieces or historical recordings. You can find so many historical recordings online, right? If you're listening to a Chrysler recording, right, even though the old scratchy phonograph sounds, you can still hear his tone. You can still hear his expression. Even with that primitive recording technology, people accept it. Old Heifetz records. It's full of scratches and artifacts. We would never, release a recording of that quality with our technology today. But people listen to those and they're still moved by them. They still learn from them. They're still wowed by them, even though the audio level is so much lower than what you can do on a typical YouTube or a webcam video these days. So if you can listen to those videos with prejudiced ears and say, oh, these are classic recordings, well, you can do the same thing. You can still hear and teach and get the sense of what you need to communicate to your students through video. So if you can get over that prejudice and realize that working even through technology's limitations, there are still ways to teach better. And I think the video that you're going to be sharing demonstrates a little bit of why those improvements are there. For example, in the video, my old teacher, Eleanor Sokoloff, when I was a kid, she would have this paper notebook and a pencil, and I'd be doing my scales, my exercises, my pieces, and she'd be scribbling all these assignments, scales, make sure you play at such and such a tempo, and watch your fingering here, and your pieces, and she'd write all these detailed notes of things to remind me to work on until the next week. Well, with my student in person, what I do is I can take snapshots of the actual music itself with my markings on the music. And she sees it simultaneously on a monitor that's hooked to my iPad. But we have a shared Google Doc. So I'm cutting and pasting into that doc the very notes that I'm, not just written notes, but the actual music. She sees my markings and she can remember. She learns faster because she's got graphic, visual representation of everything we talked about and more. And of course, with video, if you're posting a YouTube video, your students don't have to wait a whole week to watch you demonstrate it. They can watch that video hundreds of times. They can rewind it and rewatch it and relearn and basically get the sense that you're there with them 24/7. So it's not like they have to wait a week to benefit from your instruction. So those are just two small examples of the power of using technology to teach online or otherwise.
Well, I love what you're saying about making sure that the technology, it's not about, the technology is an enhancement to the teaching. It's taking it to the next, finding ways to use it to take it to the next level. It's not just technology for its own sake. And I think that's something that teachers get so caught up in. They're like they just build something, whether it's in a classroom, on a PowerPoint or Keynote. Oh, everything's about that. It's not really helping. But I love the concept of using like a Google Doc with notes and sharing with the students. That's such a better way than having an assignment notebook, which they forget or they don't have, or you write. It's to me, it's using the technology to just maximize the experience. And something, I think it was in a interview that you did with Sean Perrin, I can't remember exactly where, but he posed a question to you, which was, to what level are these lessons effective? Like, would you do this with a really advanced student? And you explained very, very eloquently how, I think it was somebody who had not played the piano at all and was, after a few months or a year, was already playing at a very high level through these lessons. So, what's that experience been like? Like, just working people, not just like, here's how to do these very simple concepts, but it sounds like you're using these lessons at the higher kind of levels of playing too.
Yeah, you're referring to my Clair de Lune from Scratch series. So back several years ago, I had this crazy idea. What if I could teach anybody to play Clair de Lune, one of the most beautiful pieces for piano by Claude Debussy, but using videos, right? And so I created this whole series of videos where I use all my graphic technologies, displaying the sheet music digitally, marking the sheet music digitally, displaying digital views of my keyboard, the pedal, all these things, but just breaking it down another at a time, but also not getting hung up on all the theory. And I think that's, we have a traditional mindset sometimes as teachers that everything, there's an order in which you have to present the material before the students are ready to play a piece. Where I wanted to take the approach, well, if the student wants to play it, the fact that they love this piece of music, that's the motivator that will get them to work hard. And so my idea was, could I teach a piece of music, just get their hands started so they're getting the immediate sense of, oh, I can do this. And then as the lessons progress, we start to introduce a little bit of the theory here and there to make it easier. Oh, did you know this is a G clef? Did you know that this is a flat? This is what these things mean when you see this, not just watch my hands play. And then little by little, as they're progressing, they're actually learning to read the music. So the story of this wonderful woman, she discovered my YouTube series. This was a piece she'd wanted to play, and she's in her mid-50s. She'd never touched the piano in her life and got the wild idea that she wanted to play this piece. Found my videos, started following along with them, and then signed up for work with me on my ArtistWorks school at artistworks.com/Hugh-Sung. It's kind of a long URL. But she signed up for my online popular piano school at ArtistWorks. And then we use a video exchange technology. I have the videos, a pre-recorded set of videos, hundreds of them, for all the pieces that I teach. So she could just watch those and learn from that, but then if she needed help, she posts what we call a video exchange submission. She posts a video of herself playing. And then I get to watch that, and then I create my own video exchange response to answer her video. And with my tech setup, I can show her, again, the sheet music, overhead cam view, side view, so she gets a very comprehensive view, and I walk her through her particular things that she needs to address. This woman, after 1 year, was playing the full version of Clair de Lune from beginning to end, all from memory. And, she's if I may say this, she's an ordinary, everyday person, never musically trained, never played the piano. But to be able to experience the joy of having something so beautiful as part of you in her life, that was the greatest gift she gave to herself. To have the experience of making beautiful, not just rinky-dink music, beautiful music. And it was such an honor to just be her guide, to help her discover what I really want the whole world to discover. Not, listening to music is great. You find your songs, you love them, you can dance to them, but take it to the next level. learn to play it. And then it's yours. It becomes part of you. And then you get to understand why we musicians are so obsessed with this incredible art form, because it just brings you up to another level of living and experiencing beauty and joy. And it's very cathartic, too. It can be very therapeutic. You're having a tough day. You go to your piece, you go to your song, you just let it out. Wow. Wow. Even when nobody else is listening, you get that out. There's something very healing. There's something very profound and uplifting about being able to express yourself. We are, in this society, especially in our work culture, there's not a lot of room for creativity. Most people struggle with. They're told to do something, they do it a certain way. If they try to do things outside the box, they can get penalized or get fired, right? Well, this is an opportunity for you to create, to be, to enjoy, and to be that creative individual that everybody has the capacity to believe. And I think the most exciting thing about the Artist Works Popular Piano School, online Popular Piano School, is the fact that I'm coming across people all over the world, most of them older folks who've never played, who are discovering the joy of making music for themselves and realizing that anybody can do this. You don't have to be super talented. You don't have to have had any experience. When you find the right teacher who you can connect with, who you trust, who makes it easy for you, that's the whole point. A great teacher makes it easy to learn. You're like, oh, I can do this. That's what a great teacher does. And that's what I aspire to do for my students. So let them see, everybody has that potential when you have the right guide who's patient enough to work with you, to know you, and to encourage you and inspire you.
Well, and what a beautiful way to learn, and a beautiful way to just kind of use everybody's time in the best way possible. How many of those, that what I love about what you're describing is you have the opportunity to capture basically your best description and demonstration of these various aspects of the music. And then they have access to that on demand. They can watch it again. They can do it again. And then if there's a need for more individualized instruction on any one of those elements, then you get that through the video exchange. And that's just because if anybody listening or watching, think about how many times you've essentially communicated the same concept to students, right? How much of what percentage of every lesson is kind of telling people similar things over and over again? What if you could capture those moments, your best version of those moments, and give those to students like you're describing, and then the individualist time is for exactly what everybody needs on those pieces. I just love it. And to me, that what you're describing is an example of using the technology we now have to really maximize learning. So I just think that's very cool. And you're reaching potentially the entire anybody on earth. It's not just people in the Northeast. It's not people, that's amazing.
Again, I want to emphasize the fact that these are not static videos. A lot of folks these days go to YouTube I go to YouTube to learn how to cook a recipe, and that's great. And a lot of folks go to YouTube to learn to play songs. There are thousands and thousands of free videos you can watch and learn to play any song. The problem, though, is that you're on your own, and you've got to figure it out on your own. And maybe, and it's amazing that some folks who try to figure it out on their own, they get frustrated and they don't know why it's not working. And that's where having a teacher, having a mentor come alongside you to say, oh, here, do this, and that'll fix it, Boy, it shaves so much time off of your learning. It becomes more fun. You don't get frustrated. You're not left to your own devices to figure something out. It's not like you're inventing the wheel all over again or building a piano from scratch. You have somebody who sees you. It's a personal connection. So even though we're using technology, it's a way of connecting like never before. So again, these aren't just libraries you watch on your own whenever. And, you have a teacher there. You want to please that teacher. You want to, get that teacher to say, oh, good job. Great. Now here's what you can do to get to the next level. That's what a teacher does. And when you can connect personally with somebody like that, I think that is the best application of technology. It's not just, we have unlimited access to information. Everybody can use Google. Everybody can use YouTube, right? But what we need more than ever these days are trusted guides, people that you can feel like, this guy really understands me. This guy, I like the way he teaches or the way she explains it. You find those guides, and when you find those trusted thought leaders and art guides, you want to follow them because they're going to make your life, your journey a whole lot smoother. You're going to be much more enjoyable, and it just connects you. I know my students by name from all over the world through these video exchanges. It's quite amazing. And I know if I would ever visit these countries, we'd get together and we'd be friends because we've seen each other personally. And that's the best thing in the world.
Well, and you've become a musical guide in a different way now too, with your podcast, A Musical Life, which I mentioned earlier, and which I just love this show. This is the sort of program that I've been wishing was available for years, ever since I got into podcasting, and I'd love to hear a little bit about the genesis of this podcast. When did you get the idea to start this podcast? How did that come about?
Yeah, it's we're actually, my goodness, time is flying by. We're getting close to the first anniversary of when I started thinking about the show. I started thinking about it last summer. Actually, July, August-ish, so to speak. And then September is when I actually started working on it. And then November is when I officially launched. So when I was trying to help promote my online popular piano school at ArtistWorks, one of the things I was trying to do was trying to reach out to other podcasters to see if they would have me on their shows like you're doing right now to interview. It'd be a great way to promote the school. I couldn't find anybody. It was really hard to find people that would. I found a few, but beyond that, with the thousands of podcasts out there and the thousands of music podcasts, nobody was really doing the kind of show as you described as what I was looking for. Somebody who could talk about music, talk about teaching, teaching music, learning music. And so I decided this is a great opportunity to create my own show. And what I started thinking about, rather than simply just being a way to promote my piano teaching, was really to try to open up to all sorts of music. Now, I'm a classical musician, but one of the things that I've become very keenly aware of is the fact that most folks have no clue of what to listen for or understanding what we do. It seems like such a foreign language, not just for classical, but for any style of music. And so what I wanted the show to be was something that anybody with no musical experience could come to, listen, enjoy, and really feel like they came away like, oh, I understood what he was talking about. I understood what those musicians were talking about. So this is not a show for musicians. This is a show for everyone to enjoy, to discover something new. I'm so excited about some of the episodes coming up. Recently, as I mentioned, featured Yo-Yo Ma and the Silk Road Ensemble, and I'm going to have one of his members who's going to be demonstrating the Persian spike fiddle, and it's just, the Persian music language. It's such a beautiful improvisatory language. I've had Gaelic singers on the show. I've had indie folk singers. I've had progressive rock musicians. It's been such a cool journey to see the landscape of music because it's all one language. There's just all these cool permutations. And so I'm hoping classical musicians will come in and listen with open ears to that video game composer, to that TV composer, and then I hope other musicians, folk musicians, will come and discover some interesting piece of classical music. It's just such a great way to throw into this wonderful melting pot of cultures and styles and peoples and perspectives, and to do it in a way that gets people to understand the rich world of music that we have, and just to share this with everyone.
Well, you do a great job of really presenting the complete musician. I love you play a few tracks from them. When we were listening to the Silk Road Ensemble, your episode, you're talking with the various musicians, you're listening to them perform. And that's one of the beauties of the podcasting medium is there's you don't have a 20-minute show necessarily. You don't have a 30-minute show. It can be as long as it needs to be. And I love how you really are making this a show for everybody. You're getting into all these pretty specific genres or topics, but yeah, everything you pull back and you're like, oh, let's just talk a little bit about composition. Where does that impetus come from, that sort of thing. It's really beautifully done. And I see you starting to experiment too. I think today's episode was Jennifer Nicole Campbell, and that was a guest appearance with Claire de Lune. So that was pretty interesting. You're bringing some other voices on as guest hosts.
I'm trying to. I've been inviting musicians. Hey, send me your stories. It seems that here's an interesting thing. A lot of musicians are really shy. Here's an opportunity for you to share your story with the world. Now, a caveat. I mean, I am being selective. I am being approached by other publicists and stuff, and so I do want to make sure that the shows are interesting and the stories are interesting. But I'm surprised that more musicians aren't being as forthcoming with sharing their music. But the other thing is interesting too is I think more musicians need to think about their own publicity. It's also been, on the flip side, it's been surprising that some of the musicians who have been approaching me, I see maybe some of them don't really have websites, or their publicity materials aren't really put together. And these are things that I worried about as a musician, and now becoming a content provider. Now I'm looking to their publicity materials. I'm looking, do you have good headshots? Do you have MP3 recordings of your music? You'd be surprised how many musicians say they want to share their story, but they have no recordings. They don't have a website. They don't have a web presence. It's difficult for me, and I think the more challenging thing is, surprisingly, some musicians have a hard time telling me their story. Okay, you're a pianist, you and 100,000 other people. What makes you unique? What makes your story special? That can be an intimidating question, but it's an important question. And it's one that I think more musicians need to think about. What makes you somebody that Jason would want to interview? What makes you somebody that we'd want to have on a musical live? And I'm saying everybody, if you go through that exercise and really think through, what's my story? What could I tell that get somebody to be compelled to take a second look at what I'm doing? Then you're a great candidate to be on any of these podcast shows or in media in general. Newspapers, blogs, press releases, anything, radio. So it's been an interesting perspective shift for me now, looking at how important good publicity is. And that's something I'm trying to help other musicians learn more about through my mastermind. So I've got a Musical Life podcast, which is the general public show. And then I have a kind of a back-end site called a Musical Life Mastermind. You've got the sign over here. And this is really the service for musicians where we talk about what I've just described. How are you doing in your career? Do you need help? Do you need some advice crafting your story? Do you need help finding more students, finding more gigs? And thinking about the business end of making a real living as a musician. That's what a Musical Life Mastermind strives to do in the back end with its community. And we share great advice and all the things and tips and tricks that I've learned from my years running a tech company at AirTurn and doing the marketing for them, and my experiences with technologies, video, digital sheet music, audio recording. I've recorded over a dozen albums, so I've gotten very familiar with the recording process. So all of these back-end things are things that I love to share. It's interesting, one of the musicians from the Silk Road Ensemble made mention of the fact that it's been a tough career for her, and she wishes she had learned more about how to build a website, how to develop her own publicity. It would have made her career much easier if she had known those things back when she was just getting started. So these are things we get to work on, no matter where you are, whether you're fresh out of school or whether you're a seasoned professional looking for the next level to grow into. This is what a Musical Life Mastermind is all about.
And I've been fortunate enough to be a member of Hugh's mastermind for the last couple of months, and I found it just hugely beneficial. And I've been interested in joining a mastermind for the past couple of years, which a mastermind, and so I just, again, it's like this just sort of, I was thinking, boy, I wish that there was a mastermind with people kind of similarly involved in what I'm in music, teaching, entrepreneurship, that sort of thing. And so it's just such a great community. And maybe could you describe just what a mastermind is? Because it's not something that was just invented this year. It actually goes back quite a while.
masterminds are a business idea, basically where you get people, similar-minded people, but you work together to share ideas. Some mastermind groups in business, so they'll reach up to other business leaders, or and try to get together on a regular basis to hold each other accountable, share problems, discuss problems they're having, share answers, and so it's kind of a group think tank. It's not just one person teaching everybody; it's really everybody teaching each other and helping each other and giving advice. And it's a trusted community. And masterminds are such an important way for businesses to grow. And so in the music world, we don't really have that. So that's something that again, coming from the business world, reading lots of business books, and they always talk about the importance of joining a mastermind so that you can grow beyond your own scope. It's so hard as a business to get an objective look at what you're doing. Let's say you're building a product, right? Or let's say you're even writing a book. And that's why writers go to these, writers groups. They'll share drafts of their stories for feedback, just like we do in musicians. We're doing mock auditions with each other, right? We play for each other to get feedback. What can I improve? You get some trusted friends together and play for them. Well, now when you take that and apply it in a career setting, a mastermind can be where you can say, I just don't know where I can find more students, or I need help getting the word out about my concert. So then we can say, oh, well, I've got an idea. Have you thought about placing Facebook ads? Or have you thought about this community that you can reach out to get more students? And even in our little mastermind group so far, we've been seeing those cool results. Not just me, but we get together through these group video chats, and we share our problems. Like, I'm so frustrated with not having enough time to do this. I need help with my Facebook ads, like I mentioned. And we share advice on the forums, through the live chats. And it's been so cool to see people come back the next week or the week after and it's like, hey, it worked. I was able to reach out and suddenly I've got more students. Oh, that ad idea you had. Ooh. Before, I think somebody had mentioned on the forums that it spent $80 and got 4 likes. And with some tweaking, I was able to share some of my experiences. And everybody's sharing their experiences. But with $1, he was able to get, I think, like 40 likes or something for just $1. And he's like, wow, what a great improvement. These are the things, again, I don't have all the answers. I love to share what I have. And in fact, some of the members have been sharing their ideas with me, and which inspired me to go on to create other articles, to research, come back to the group with what I've learned, to share it with everybody. We all learn, we all inspire each other, and we all have different areas of expertise that we can lend to each other to help each other grow and improve. It's an amazing way to not feel like you're all alone struggling to make a living as a musician, to hear some creative perspectives that you may not have thought of yourself.
And it's such a great way to that weekly check-in. The what's available on the site is great, and like Hugh was talking about, there are all these videos and forums about various things from networking to Facebook ads to you name it. There's already a lot of content on there, and then these weekly check-ins are great. There were a few things that I'd been sort of procrastinating on, and we talked about, like even setting up an LLC, and I was like, I've been meaning to do that for years. Well, I went and did it after we did. It took me like an hour and a half, and I was done, right? And it was, and not only that, but there are a few like really concrete things that I've been meaning to do, and it's just nice to have a group like that where you can check in. And I've just found it extremely beneficial, and yeah, it's quite a community that you've built, and it's exciting. It's exciting to see what's going on there.
Thank you, and that's a great point you raised too. The whole concept is, like I said, we can get information anywhere. There's no shortage of information to learn how to do anything, right? Mm-hmm. But sometimes you need somebody to just kind of kick you in the pants and say, hey, did you follow through on that idea you had? Or maybe somebody to say, you might want to rethink the way you're, phrasing that copy ad. Or, have you really thought through what if this is going to work? Real personal feedback. There's no substitute. And even motivation. Folks who are like, yeah, I know I need to get an LLC. Yeah, I should get a trademark. And somebody say, here, why don't you get started? I'm going to hold you accountable. Mm-hmm. Don't you come back to the group and make sure you get it done. It's giving you a little checklist. But getting that personal motivation from people who really care. Because when you succeed, we all succeed. When we all succeed, boy, that helps music in general. It helps the music business in general. We are all here for each other. And sometimes we just need somebody else to come alongside us to give us another idea when we're stuck at a roadblock or when we feel like we don't know how to get out of this situation or don't know the next step. And somebody who's been along the path or other people can just say, you can do it. And here are some ideas to do that, to break through that logjam, that artistic, creative, business, career logjam. And so these are the things that make communities, again, not static, forums or places where you just get information, but places where you really feel connections with other people who care about you. That's the best way that the internet, I think, can be used to improve our lives. Not just sitting back and consuming information, but being part of vibrant, living communities.
Yeah, it's great. And it taps into something that people bring up a lot in my community, which is how can I exist as a musician? How can I make a living? How can I make a satisfying living outside of just what people think of as the traditional careers in my community, like playing in an orchestra, teaching, and you present and talk with the other members in the community about so many interesting ways that maybe you didn't even think of to look at broadening your career opportunities. And and again, it's full of really actionable advice that you can do to kind of move to the next step, look at different ways of generating income, and look at different ways of using your time, better using your time. So again, kudos to you for building this community. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. And let folks know where they can find both the mastermind and the podcast and you. Where can they go online?
Sure. So A Musical Life podcast can simply be found at amusicallife.com. And that name is trademarked.
Hey.
Couldn't believe it was available. amusicallife.com. Or you can go to iTunes or Stitcher, or if you have a podcast playing app, just search for the words A Musical Life. Don't forget the A. And you'll be able to find it within those podcast players as well. The mastermind is simply you simply go to A Musical Life Mastermind, all one word, .com. That'll take you to a special site where I get a chance to get some feedback from you in terms of how I can best help you. But check out A Musical Life Mastermind.com.
Great. Well, Hugh, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm just thrilled. And I look forward every Monday to see what you got coming out. It always is a surprise, always a different kind of guest, always engaging, and really just congratulations on what you've been up to. I can't wait to follow along with you the next few years.
Jason, it has been such an honor to get to know you and to become friends like this. And congratulations to you for being the grandfather of podcasters for musicians, podcasting for 10 years and really going there in the front lines for all of us. You're doing such an amazing job with all the things that you're doing as well. So thank you so much for letting me be on your show.
Hey, thanks a lot.